Welcome to this evening's readings of two plays of mine. I'm Carolyn Gage, the playwright and the producer of these plays. We have a wonderful cast and crew, and I'm very, very honored to tell you that Dr. Melissa Farley will be joining us for the Talkback tonight. Dr. Farley is a feminist psychologist who's written 40 peer-reviewed articles and 2 books on the sex trade. She founded the abolitionist nonprofit Prostitution Research and Education in 1995, dedicated to research and public education about prostitution, pornography, and trafficking. This entire event is a fundraiser, and it's also a consciousness raiser for her organization, Prostitution Research and Education. All of the donations will go to that organization tonight, and all of your donations are tax deductible. So the best way to donate is to go to their website, which is www.prostitutionresearch.com. Right there on the first page, big yellow donate button, and there's a PayPal option. So again, www.prostitutionresearch.com and hit the bright yellow donate button. I also wanted to let you know that later on tonight, I'm going to be able to put the recording of this up on YouTube, and it will be available for 48 hours. That is through Tuesday night. And I don't have the URL for that yet, but as soon as I get it, it will be up on social media, on my email list, emailing it to all my friends, cast, and everybody. And you can email me for that information. We would love to take advantage of the 48 hours. I waited 20 years to write plays on the subject of prostitution because I was trying to figure out how to write something that would generate a model of reality to challenge people's ideas about prostitution. And it did take me that long to get the concept that was what I needed. These plays are the fruition of those 3 decades of thinking about this subject very hard. So, what we're going to do is read these 2 plays. They're both very short. First one's about 15 minutes. Second one's about 20, maybe 25 minutes. And then we will go right into the talk back. So, here we go. And the first play is Head in the Game, and it will run for 15 minutes. So... Head in the Game. Scene 1. Lights come up on the sidewalk outside the entrance to Boxing Girls Gym, a new establishment in an urban area. Sarah and Kai are talking. Sarah is in her mid to late 20s. She's a college student from a working class background and a part-time intern at Gentleman's Magazine. Kai, mid-30s, works full-time for the magazine. Raised middle class, she's very much the young professional on her way up.
So this is it?
Yep, Boxing Girls Gym.
Do you think they'll believe us?
Why wouldn't they?
Because I've never been undercover before.
We're not undercover.
But you said we weren't going to tell them that we were from Gentleman Magazine, that you didn't want them to know we were journalists, and that we were going to pretend that we were there because we wanted to be boxing girls.
First off, only one of us is a professional journalist. You're an intern.
But what if they find out we're spying on them and they beat us up?
Why would they do that?
Because that's what they do, isn't it? The boxing girls? Hello, the men come in and beat them up?
That is not what they do at all. The men come in and they pay to spar with the girls. They pay for a sparring partner's time. It's gym. There's a ring. It's boxing. That's why they call it Boxing Girls.
But the boxing girls aren't allowed to punch back or defend themselves.
They're paid to let the men win.
They're paid to get beat up.
And football players are paid to get concussions. Now, you can look at it any way that you want to, but it's a sport.
But in football, the whole point of the game isn't that
they get paid. They're not victims. It's a job, a career. No, it's not for everyone. But then again, neither is journalism.
I'm just trying to understand. If it's so legitimate, then why aren't we going to tell them we're from Gentleman Magazine?
Because most people get nervous talking to journalists. You can get a better view of their operation if they treat us like insiders.
My name's going to be Jean.
We don't need fake names. They're not going to know who we are anyway.
I always wanted to be a Jean. I kind of look like a Jean, don't I?
I have to file the story tonight, so come on.
Jean.
Come on, Jean.
They exit into the gym. Sarah is doing her Jean strut. End of scene. Scene 2. The lights come up on the lobby of the Boxing Girls Gym. There's a front desk and a row of chairs. Marissa, a nervous young woman, is sitting in one of the chairs. She wears boxing attire, but otherwise in no way looks athletic. Farley, a tough older woman, owns the franchise. She stands behind a large counter. She's busy with bookkeeping. Behind her is a row of keys to the different sparring rooms. Kai enters with Sarah following. Kai steps up to the desk. Farley doesn't look up.
Hello?
Yeah,
We're here to box?
$100 an hour, and I need to have the cash up front.
What?
$100 an hour of sparring a piece.
No. We're not here to hire a boxing girl. We want to apply.
Wait, you mean that women come in here to...
What, to box? Of course. I mean, why wouldn't they? Boxing is an equal opportunity sport.
I just thought that...
Do we have to fill something out? A job application?
Where did you hear about us?
At the university, some of the girls in my dorm were boxing girls over the summer.
You're a student?
Yes?
What about you?
Oh, a single mom. You probably see a lot of us.
Not usually in designer clothes.
I have expensive taste and I'm here to support my habits.
But I really am a student.
Any prior experience?
Not boxing, but I took some self-defense classes.
Relevant to the job.
Battered women's shelter.
Massage parlor, escort service, exotic dancing.
Oh, then I guess not.
Waitress at a strip club.
You can both intern, unpaid, and you gotta sign a waiver.
Is that legal?
Take it or leave it.
We're in.
Farley slides some papers toward them.
What's the waiver for?
Oh, for God's sake, Sarah, it's a gym waiver.
Jean.
Sarah, Jean. You have to sign them at any gym and you have to sign them for yoga class.
My friends call me Jean.
Well, Jean, sign here.
She's reading.
I hereby agree to assume all risks attendant upon myself while participating in this gym. As a result of my participation on the Boxing Girls Gym, LLC, I hereby waive, release, and discharge any and all claims for personal injury or property damage which I may have or which may hereafter accrue to me or death. Death?
Suddenly, the door swings open and a policeman barges in.
May I help you?
Yeah, police. We got to call someone for a woman saying she was getting beat up, that some guy was trying to kill her. Do you know anything about this? You, what's your name?
Jean?
Excuse me, do you know where you are?
And who are you?
Farley Dolan, I'm the owner.
The owner of what?
The gym. This is a boxing girls gym.
Boxing girls. Well, why didn't you say so?
You've heard of us.
Oh, yeah, the guys down at the station come down here after work sometimes to blow off some steam.
Maybe you'd like a tour.
Wait, what about...
Just then, a boxing girl runs in. This is Connie. She's in her 20s. Her face is badly flushed and swollen.
Oh my God. Thank God you're here. Help me.
I thought you said this was, what do you call it?
Boxing girls. It is. We're a legitimate gym. I can show you our license.
And he was going to kill me. just kept hitting me.
This doesn't look particularly legitimate to me.
Just let me deal with it.
He calls
Connie,
to
where's
Connie
your
and
client?
gently pulls her off the policeman's arm.
Where is your client? Your client, the man who was sparring with you. I need you to tell me, where is he?
Sparring?
Was he still in the gym when you left?
I don't know. Yes.
Marissa,
What?
Marissa, I need you to go to gym 4 immediately. Gym 4, and tell the client you're tagging in for Connie.
Marissa gets up.
And that we apologize for the interruption of service.
No, Marissa, he's going to kill you. You don't understand. He's going to kill her.
Farley pulls Connie off Marissa. Harley stands between her and Marissa.
Connie, let go. Marissa, did you hear me? And I'll pay you the full fee, even though it's only half a round. Go. Go.
No, Marissa!
Grabbing her again.
Connie, stop it.
He had his hands around my neck. Look.
Not possible. We make all our clients wear protection.
Now, when you say a protection,
Gloves, boxing gloves. We don't want anyone to get hurt. He couldn't have put his fingers around her neck because of the gloves.
He took them off.
Now, why would he do that? That's not allowed.
He said he wanted to feel it. He had his fingers around my neck and he kept squeezing tighter and tighter. And I told him to stop and I couldn't breathe. And he laughed and he said that was the point.
Connie, did you hurt him?
What?
When you thought he had his hands around your neck, did you kick him or claw him?
I tried to pull his fingers away.
You didn't attack him in any way.
No.
Good. Nothing to report, officer.
now, if you didn't attack him, how did you manage to get away and call us?
He was out of breath from punching me.
Connie, sparring. You were his legal sparring partner.
And his face was all red. And he started to take his gloves off so that I knew he was going to do something worse than punching. So while he was doing that, I was able to crawl under the ropes and get to my phone. But while I was doing that, he got the gloves off and he came up behind me and he grabbed me by my neck. See?
What did you do?
I pretended to pass out and he dropped me to the floor. So I ran to the other side of the ring. So now he was between me and the door. And we just stood there because he knew if he came after me that I'd make it to the door before he did. So we were like that for a long time. And then I pretended like I was starting to faint. So he came after me, but I ran under the other side of the ring and got to the door and then I locked it.
You locked it? You locked the client in the gym? Well, sir, I suppose he has a claim for unlawful restraint if he wants to make it, but since Marissa hasn't come back, I think the most likely scenario is that he's finishing his round with her. But if you need to go talk to him.
Just then the policeman's beeper goes off and he takes the call.
Yeah? Yeah. Where? All right, yeah. No, this is a false alarm. I'm on my way. I got another call. I'll take a rain check if that's okay.
Okay. Oh, here's a card. Just call anytime and I can set up an appointment.
You have a few more of these?
Sure, whole stack.
Thanks. I'll pass them out at the station. All right, then. Take care of yourself.
He exits.
Wait, what?
Hey. Remember why we're here, Jean.
But this woman almost got killed.
And Harley is dealing with it. Let the woman do her job and you do yours.
Connie,
Connie has slumped into one of the chairs, holding her head. Harley sits next to her.
Connie, look.
I guess I'll go home.
You don't need to do that. Hang on.
Harley crosses behind the counter and comes back with a jar of pills and a bottle of water.
Here. Take these.
Connie holds out her hand. Harley counts out a specific number and opens a water bottle for Connie.
Look, it's the end of the month, right? Okay, rent's due next week, right? And you got a kid, a little girl. So it's not just about you. You don't want to lose your kid, do you? No, I don't want to see that happen. Connie, honey, you got to get your priorities straight, right? If you go home now, I can't pay you for today. I had to give the whole fee to Marissa to cover for you, remember? No, but listen, here's what I can do. Elaine has a client tonight, and he's out of shape, not much of a boxer, easy sparring. I'll see if she'll trade off with you, and you can give her one of your clients later. That way you can get your rent money. Honey, you gotta get your head back in the game. Tell you what, take some time out. Go to the makeup room and fix your face. That always makes a girl feel better. Hey, try out the new massage chair I bought you girls. Maybe take a little nap. Elaine's client won't be here till after 6, and by then you'll be all fresh and ready to go. How's that? It's the best we can do. More pills? Yeah, the girl. You got this.
She exits.
That's it?
Harley, who has gone to put the pills back behind the counter, turns.
That's it? That's all you're going to do?
What would you suggest?
Well, she just got the shit beat out of her and escaped an attempted murder. And he's got another victim in there. And you just let the police walk out of here. Sarah. My name is Sarah, and her name is Kai, and we're doing a story for a magazine.
What magazine?
It doesn't matter.
What magazine?
Gentlemen,
Oh, yeah, there, okay.
If you're not going to do anything, I will.
What? What are you gonna do, tough girl? Pay her rent for her? Get her a job at Burger King so she can dump her toddler in daycare for 40 hours a week and still not afford groceries? She makes good money here, and that's her choice. She makes enough money where she only has to work a few hours a day. She can spend the rest of the time with her kid. Yeah, some days are harder than others, and this was one of them. Part of what she signed on for.
Shut up. Shut up. That's bullshit, and you know it.
I know a lot of women have it worse every day, and they don't get paid at all. I used to be a boxing girl. I know what it's like. That's why I bought me a franchise. Do things a little different. The makeup room, the massage chair, and I give them the pills so they don't get hooked. My girls, they trust me.
It's criminal assault. Did you see her face? Just because somebody pays to hit her doesn't mean she's not going to feel it, not going to bruise, not going to have a black eye, not going to have her jaw dislocated.
Boxing, it can be a tough sport.
It's not a sport. It's not a sport. Only one person does the punching. That's not boxing.
Then I suppose you think prostitution isn't sex either.
What?
You and your friend, out.
I'm taking that woman. She needs to go to the ER and then to the police.
She doesn't want to go.
I don't care. She's not staying here.
Lay a finger on her and it's assault.
Farley picks up the phone and starts to dial.
911. And this is trespass right now. Both of you. I'm going to count to 5, and if you're not gone, I'm hitting that last digit. Your choice. 1, 2,
Sarah, we gotta go.
3,
No, come on.
4.
We're going. We're going.
She grabs Sarah. Sarah turns and shoves her. Kai grabs her again. Sarah shoves her again.
Don't do that again.
Come on.
This time when she grabs Sarah, Sarah throws a punch. Kai staggers back.
Oh.
Harley completes the call, pulls out a gun from behind the counter and holds it on Sarah. Sarah freezes.
Got an assault and battery going on? Boxing Girls Gym, 874 Franklin Boulevard. No, nobody got hurt. I got a gun on the assailant.
Kai slips out the door. Harley hangs up the phone.
You know, it can be tough to get work when you got a criminal record. Tell you what, look us up and I'll give you a job. You won't have to intern.
Blackout. End of play. Thank you. We are going to, this is going to be a super short intermission. We will be doing a company curtain call after the second play because we've got actors who are changing costumes right now. The second play is The Intimacy Coordinator, and it's going to run about 20 minutes, and then it will be followed by this fabulous talkback. So, all right, so here we go, The Intimacy Coordinator.
The Intimacy Coordinator. Lights come up in a private room in a brothel. There is a large bed, a chair, and a small round table with an ashtray. Jewel, a woman in her 20s, sits at the table, putting on makeup using a small compact. She is wearing a sexy robe. She peers at her watch and then rises and begins to pace. She stops at the door, opens it, and looks up and down the hall. She pulls out a cell phone, and just as she starts to dial, there's a knock at the door. She shuts off the cell phone and crosses to the door, opening it. Stan is in the doorway, a male in his 30s or 40s. He wears casual clothing. He is distracted and harried.
I'm sorry I'm late. It was a traffic jam.
It's your time, honey.
Hey, come on. I mean, there was traffic jam. It's not my fault.
You think it's mine?
Yeah, no, but it's $300 a night. Come on. I think you could cut me some slack.
Yeah, $300 an hour. And I think you can leave in time to get here.
It was 10 minutes.
Not my problem.
Come on.
TikTok.
Okay. Fine.
Annoyed, he pulls off his shirt and begins to tug on his belt.
Nice to meet you too.
I'm Stan.
I'm Jewel, but you can call me Jewel.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you, Joe.
He finally frees his belt and pulls down his pants. He turns to face her, annoyed.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you, Jewel.
Belt. That's a belt. They're not allowed up here. You have to leave it at the front desk.
What?
House rules. Belts and ties at the front desk.
Oh, for Christ's sakes.
He yanks his pants on again, grabs the belt, and heads out the door. Jewel paces again, checking her makeup, fiddling with the bed sheets. Stan returns. He's been running. He pulls down his pants, and there's a knock at the door.
Who the hell is that?
I don't know. Busy.
The knock comes again.
I said I'm busy. Talk to the receptionist.
More knocking.
Oh, all right.
Panicked, he yanks his pants on again, more knocking. She whips open the door. Marcia is standing there. She is a woman in her 30s wearing a business suit and carrying a briefcase.
What do you want?
Are you Jewel?
Who's asking?
Marcia Lyon.
I'm busy.
Well, I need to speak with you.
Schedule downstairs.
I did.
I don't think so. This appointment's been on the books for a week.
Yes,
With a client.
I know. And I need to speak with both of you, which is why I'm here now.
What's an intimacy coordinator?
Don't look at me.
Are you a sex therapist?
Not exactly.
Yeah, well, we don't need anything like that. Jewel here is a professional. She doesn't need any help, and we're in a little hurry here, if you don't mind.
Intimacy.
It's a protection for you, for the client, and for your establishment. That's why your employer has retained my services and sent me here.
Look, I'm not into any of the kinky shit. No whips, no cutting, no bondage, no gag, not even choking. Nobody's gonna get hurt here. We're just gonna have some good old-fashioned American sex.
And I'm still going to need signatures from both of you on these forms.
I'm not
Opening the
signing it.
briefcase.
Originally, intimacy coordinators were hired by theaters and film studios to ensure the safety and comfort of the actors who were being required to perform sexual or romantic scenes.
No, you see, nobody's acting out any scenarios. Nobody's gonna be filming anything. It's just plain old sex, me and her, and that's all.
These consent forms are to ensure that all the choreography is agreed on.
No. There's not gonna be any show. There's no lap dance, no strippers. There's nothing to choreograph.
Let me see those fucking forms. This is some kind of joke, right? Check-in? Seriously? Check-in. Personal boundaries? Who the hell sent you?
You know what? I don't care.
Hey, Stan, you planning on touching my upper chest region today?
What?
Or my back pelvis area?
Your back pelvis, what?
Boobs and butt. Are you going to touch my boobs or my butt today? Because this lady seems to think it's her business.
I don't know.
And
What?
if you are, she needs to know if you're going to be touching just the skin or the muscle, or if you're going to go all the way to the bone. Touch level 1, 2, or 3.
It's called consent.
She wants to know if you'll be opening and closing the distance between our pelvises.
Opening the... I don't know what this... What?
The language is intentionally non-sexual to keep the interaction professional and non-triggering.
I just want to have sex. I paid $300 and I'm already out $50 for a traffic jam that wasn't my fault because I left him plenty of time. In fact, I was going to be early. But still, I'm out $50. Nobody told me about the belts and ties. And then she waits till I got my pants off to tell me. So that's 5 minutes there, which is $25. So now I'm out $75 and now it's another $50. And I don't even know what this is about.
It's about sex. You said you were going to be having sex.
Yes.
But what about Jewel?
What about Jewel?
Is she going to be having sex?
Well, yeah, it takes two to tango.
But will she actually be having sex?
Yes, she will be having sex with me.
I'm confused. Is Jewel paying you?
No.
Is she dating you?
No.
Jewel, would you be allowing your client to have sex with you if he wasn't paying you?
Well, Marcia, I guess we will never know since he is paying me.
$300.
Well, Jewel, I think we can know because your client would be a fool to pay for something that he could otherwise get for free.
Okay, so this has been a barrel of laughs, but now it's time for you to go.
She gathers up the papers and crosses to the door.
As soon as you finalize the consent forms.
You know I'm not going to do that.
Why not?
Because that's not part of my job.
Consent isn't part of your job?
I didn't say that.
Oh, I think that you just did.
Stan has crossed to the chair where he slumps down looking at his watch. Marcia begins to pace like an attorney lecturing the jury.
If you are not physically attracted to Stan or turned on by him, and your motive for allowing him physical access to your body is money, then the service you are actually providing is a performance. You are being paid to enact the role of someone sexually attracted to or turned on by Stan, someone who desires him physically. And precisely because it is a performance for which there is a legal contract, every step of that performance must be carefully choreographed to ensure that the consent is both mutual and ongoing throughout the interaction. Otherwise, of course, it can be construed in the eyes of the law as harassment and especially as assault.
Stan, I think you better go.
What?
You need to go, Stan. They can reschedule you at the front desk.
She holds out his pants.
I don't understand.
And you don't have to. That's part of what you pay for, but this appointment is over.
She drops his pants.
Now! Do not make me ring for the bouncer.
Standing up and grabbing the pants.
Okay, you don't have to yell. I'm going. I'm going.
Stan exits and Jewel closes the door behind him.
So who's paying you?
Your boss?
No, he's not. Who put you up to this?
Up to what?
Intimacy coordinator? That was quite the act. What else can you do?
Isn't that enough? I made a man disappear, didn't I?
No, you didn't. I got rid of him. Don't flatter yourself. If I wanted him here, you would be gone. He showed up late, bitching about getting overtime. I don't work with clients who are whiny little bitches.
Could you please put that out? I'm allergic. How would you like to work with me?
So who put you up to this? Right-wing religious organization, left-wing radical feminists? Who paid you to interrupt my business today?
What if I told you that I work for myself?
In question, right-wing religious nut or left-wing men hater?
Former prostitute.
So a little bit of both. Let me guess. Father? No. Uncle? Grandfather? Brother? Brother. Your brother raped you when you were a child and nobody believed you. So you started acting out because as long as people are going to believe you're a bad girl, you might as well be one. So then you started acting out at school, had some trouble with alcohol or drugs. Both? Interesting. Then you got a reputation for being a slut or a psycho, or both. And then some older man, your sympathetic art teacher, came along and exploited your vulnerability, and you believed he loved you, and of course you were in love with him, the first in a long line of daddies, and eventually one of them would turn out to be a pimp, but of course you wouldn't catch on until it was too late. And then fast forward to that magical day when some emergency room doctor or some public health nurse or some battered woman shelter counselor or some flyer passed on your door of a toilet stall in a YWCA or some book or some movie or some tweet opened your eyes to the fact that you are a victim. And in fact, your whole life, you have never been anything but a victim, and that nothing is your fault, and that everything you'd ever done was just an effort to survive. So now you're on a mission to open the eyes of your former sisters who are still toiling away in ignorance and shame, victims of the patriarchy and betrayers of their sex. Did I miss anything?
Some.
Well, I think you're missing some too. Not everyone who works this job is a victim.
I used to say that.
Yeah, well, some of us say that we actually mean it. Some of us have looked hard at our options and we actually made an informed decision that this job is a good fit for us. We like what we do. Our clients like what we do. Our bosses like what we do. And you know what? We're damn good at it. We earn a lot of money for making everybody happy. It's a win-win. And we like that. Race car driving is dangerous too.
Okay, but you couldn't fill out the consent forms.
Me too. I understand what I've agreed to.
So do I. You consent to waive consent.
No, we negotiate.
Oh, maybe on the basics, anal, oral, BDSM, but what about everything else? How he touches you, when he touches you, what he gets to say to you, if he kisses you, where he kisses
For
you.
$300 an hour, I really don't give a crap. You picked the wrong woman to try to convert.
I could not have picked a better one.
No, see, I don't have a problem with prostitution.
Yes, but much of the rest of the world does.
And I don't give a shit what they think.
If you like your job as much as you say you do, then you better give a shit.
Why?
Because there are a lot of people out there who are working 24/7 to abolish prostitution, and they're not all right-wing or men-hating nut jobs. I mean, just look at the Nordic model. Yeah, I know, it criminalizes the buyer and decriminalizes the prostitute. How crazy is that?
Victim thing again?
But it's already the law in Sweden, Norway, Iceland, Ireland, Canada, France, Israel.
Sex police.
It's women like you who are the only ones who can turn the victim narrative around.
Oh,
The consent forms.
they're a joke.
Now, hang on. Ask yourself, how can I get the world to understand that it's not only legitimate work, but an empowering career choice for women, a path to self-esteem, financial independence, and public recognition for providing a service to humanity?
Upper chest region.
So, the average age of girls entering prostitution is 12 to 14 years old.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Who says?
About every study ever done. Look, this is going to be a fight, and you're not going to win it by ignoring the facts. People tried to do that in Sweden, Norway, Iceland, and that's how they lost.
Okay. I'm listening.
Well, these statistics make it pretty easy for people to believe that prostitutes are victims. No, wait. So, get them out. Get the victims out. People are never going to believe that anyone prostituted as a child is anything but a victim. You can see that, right?
So that's the pitch, isn't it? You thought you had me going, didn't you?
Do a search.
What? You mean the statistics? So what? Nobody cares about those girls. You should know that. You were one of them.
Sweden, Norway, Iceland, Ireland.
Okay. But you, let's talk about you. You're not really interested in polishing the image, are you? You want to shut the whole thing down. Yeah, I thought so. You quitters are all the same.
Okay, yeah, but 42 million prostituted women and girls in the world. The odds aren't really in my favor, are they?
Nope.
But we actually have a lot of common ground.
I don't think so.
Well, give me a chance. So here's the pitch, as you call it. Why you should work with me as an intimacy coordinator. The consent form is actually about re-education, about consciousness raising. These women who were brought in as children never learned what consent looks like. And even if they did, they never learned that they had a right to it. It was knowledge that was either withheld or distorted in order to coerce them. So here, look, levels of touch, specific naming of parts of anatomy and sequences of action, duration of touch. It's a back to basics primer on what it means to have control over physical intimacy. Think of it like remedial learning. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's reasonable to assume that many or even most of these women and girls who were prostituted as children will realize that they never chose this life and that possibly they aren't choosing it now.
I don't think that's a reasonable assumption at all
Why not?
because of the money.
Well, that's actually the second public relations issue.
The money?
Around 90% of prostitutes report wanting to get out of prostitution, but they lack the resources to leave.
That's total bullshit.
No, it's not. That's real. Study after study, country after country, demographic after demographic.
90%? I don't believe it.
Well, okay, let's suppose for a moment that it's true. That would put you in a pretty powerful position. What if everyone who wanted out could suddenly get out? Demand would far exceed supply, and women like you could set your own prices, like free agent professional athletes.
Yeah, but that's never going to happen. Who's going to get the money for all of these millions of women to leave?
Intimacy coordinators?
Yeah, right.
Well, hang on. The consent form actually documents in detail and with clinical precision the agreements between prostitutes and their clients. It has both signatures and it's a legal document. Look, you and I both know that what goes on in these rooms would constitute creation of a hostile work environment, sexual harassment, and rape if it were happening in any other place of employment.
And race car driving would be reckless endangerment. What's your point?
My point is, statistically, about 3/4 of prostitutes are raped at least once a year. Not you, of course, but that's the statistic. As an intimacy coordinator, you will be in a position to support these women, the 90% who want out, by providing them with the documentation they need to take the brothel owners to court. And of course, the settlement money would provide the resources needed to leave.
And who pays you? Who would pay me?
Who pays for any revolution? We get our money from many sources, but I can't tell you because it's too dangerous.
Dangerous?
Underground. It's like trying to form a union. The owners don't want to see the workers take control. As you said yourself, they don't give a shit about these girls who come in without consent, and they don't give a shit about the women who feel trapped. The more, the merrier. And they certainly don't want to see women like yourself acting as free agents. There's nothing more dangerous than a consent form.
She puts them in a briefcase and snaps it shut.
You have my card.
She turns to exit.
Make an appointment. On your way out, make an appointment with me for next week.
So we have a deal?
She extends her hand.
Skin, muscle, or bone?
Touch level 3. Bone.
Jewel extends her hand and the women shake. They continue to clasp hands as the lights fade. Blackout, end of play.
I'm going to invite the actors to please all come on now, and we can give them a virtual curtain call here. Come on in, y'all. All right. Jewel, there she is. All right, I'm just going to name the names because it becomes a mess if we let other people try to do that, and they will wave. Amanda Sylvia Wagner. Thank you. Oh, you look so different without your damage. Catherine Michelle Tanner. Sayara Major. Sarah J., Akia Woods, and Eric Hyatt. So all of you at home, I want you just to take a minute and give these folks a big hand, because they did a real deep dive into this work, not just a reading. They did the inner work, which was, as you can imagine, extremely challenging, as well as the technical work, and did it so well, dealing with all kinds of tech stuff. I'm just going to take a minute and join me, please. Thank you so much. It was really wonderful. As a playwright, I have never seen these done in a public reading before like this, and it was just wonderful. I want to thank you all so very much. So stick around for the talk back, and if you've got questions, be sure to put them in. And so I will invite you to go away, and then I'm going to we'll start the talk back. The moderator will be Dr. Stripe Gandara.
Thank you, Carolyn. And a big thank you to all the actors. Wow. Those were two really powerful performances of some of Gage's most difficult and emotionally compelling work. So bravo. As I go over some of the housekeeping in preparation for our talk back, let us just take a moment to take in what we witnessed and just sit with the provocation presented in these plays. In a minute, I will invite playwright Carolyn Gage and feminist psychologist and founder of the 501c3 Prostitution Research and Education, Dr. Melissa Farley, to join us for a conversation. First, though, at the bottom of your screen, you will see the Q&A icon. Please feel free to type your questions there. Is there something you'd like to ask our panelists about the plays or about their perspectives on the issue the plays raise? Questions that help us rethink our perspective on prostitution and patriarchy. Please know that only the hosts of the production will be able to see the questions you ask. As I moderate the conversation with our panelists, Kate, our tech support, will sort through the Q&A and select some of the questions to ask at the end of our conversation. Also, as a reminder, if you'd like to donate to the production this evening, please do so at prostitutionresearch.com. All proceeds from tonight's performance will be directed to Dr. Farley's organization. I'd like to ask Carolyn and Melissa to please join me now. Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Melissa. Let's begin our conversation. So tonight's event is titled Abolition. And I want to begin by laying the political landscape and identifying the main positions on prostitution to provide context for our conversation. So there are four primary positions. First, decriminalization, a stance that supports efforts to eliminate all laws and prohibits the state and law enforcement officials from intervening in any prostitution-related activities or transactions. This position posits that prostitution is labor, like any other, and that it should not be subject to any special regulation or laws. This is the current situation in New Zealand. Proponents of this view typically consider any laws and regulations to be intrusive and feel that criminalization negatively affects sex workers. Amnesty International is one of the notable groups calling for the decriminalization of prostitution. A second position is for legalization, and this stance calls for the regulation of prostitution with laws regarding where, when, and how prostitution takes place. Under legalization, prostitution is considered a legitimate business. This is the current situation in the Netherlands, Germany, most of Australia, and parts of Nevada in the US. A third position, the Nordic model, which Carolyn, you advocate for in your plays, is based on criminalizing the buyers and decriminalizing the prostitutes. The main objective of this model is to decrease the demand for prostitution by punishing the soliciting of sexual services. Countries that have adopted the Nordic model, which were mentioned in the play, include Sweden, Norway, Iceland, Canada, Ireland, France, and Israel. Additionally, this model opens up exit strategies in terms of housing, childcare, addiction, education, training, all the kinds of things that women need to get out of prostitution. I do also want to mention prohibitionism as a position where both prostitutes and clients are criminalized. This is the prevailing attitude nearly everywhere in the US, with a few exceptions. I did recently read an article in the New York Times that indicated Manhattan will be joining Baltimore, Philadelphia, and Brooklyn in deciding not to prosecute sex workers, claiming that, quote, over the last decade, we've learned from those with lived experience and from our own experience on the ground that criminally prosecuting prostitutes does not make us safer and too often achieves the opposite result by further marginalizing vulnerable New Yorkers. The office will continue to prosecute pimps and sex traffickers, as well as people who pay for sex, herein adopting a Nordic model approach. Before we get into a deeper discussion about the Nordic model and the various positions and approaches to prostitution, I thought we could start our conversation this evening by painting a picture of what prostitution really is. So let's start there with a straightforward question that brings both of your work, Carolyn and Melissa, into focus and provides us an entry point into a really difficult conversation. So Melissa, let me start off by asking you, what is prostitution? What is it really? In your decades of working in this field, what have you learned prostitution to be?
I would say for myself, the best way I would describe it is in the words of survivors I've interviewed over the years, which is a description that reflects the appearance of consent, which Carolyn is brilliantly tackling in these plays, the appearance of consent, but right underneath that, the tolerance of extreme abuse. So women in prostitution have called it paid rape. They've called it voluntary slavery. And I guess in my own words, how I would describe it is, if you think about pretty much everything bad that can happen to women in their lives, sexual abuse in childhood, something close to 75% of everyone in prostitution has a history of childhood sexual abuse. So if you think of everything bad that can happen to women, sexual abuse, childhood, adulthood, battering, sexual harassment, as was discussed in the second play, abandonment as kids, nowhere to turn to in the way of housing, inequality in the U.S. If you and this triple cage of sexism, racism, and poverty that leaves women with no place to go, I would just say it's a combination of all of those things with this frosting put on top of it that it's either sex or work, neither of which it really is. So that would be a quick answer, Stripe. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll ask questions here soon that sort of open up some of the talking points that you included in that response. But let me go to Carolyn and talk about the plays that we just listened to. You wanted, Carolyn, to write plays that would reframe the conversation about prostitution. Can you speak to us a bit about the current framing of the conversation? And then will you talk about how you upend or challenge that perspective? So in a sense, what are you doing in your plays? What are you responding to?
Well, just the scenario that it's an empowering career choice for women and all that stuff. And I think for me, Rachel Moran's book, is it Paid For? Melissa,
Yeah.
am I getting the title right? Paid For, I think My Journey Through Prostitution is the subtitle. But that was brilliant. I just can't say enough about it. She documents it's just astounding, the clarity and how articulate she is about just the trauma of the experience. And I was reading interviews with her, and she made this analogy to someone, and she said, "Look, if you pay me $20 to punch me in the face, and I agree to that, it doesn't mean my face isn't going to bruise." I'm paraphrasing here, but you know, that I'm not going to register the punch. The money doesn't change anything. I'm still punched in the face. And she makes the point, the sex is unwelcome. You know, the sex is, they're not seeking out the sex. They're being paid to allow access to their body, but it's unwelcome sex, which of course is rape. And the body registers it just like that punch. The money doesn't change the punch. You're still punched in the face. The money doesn't change the fact this is someone you're not attracted to, may even be disgusted by or repelled by, in a series of acts that you are not feeling the slightest desire for. The body is registering that. And that was the moment, the punching analogy. From that, I got the boxing girls. And I thought, perhaps this will help people really understand. And the obfuscation that happens when you use the word sex. It's not sex. Just like in my play, it's not sparring. Only one person is throwing the punches. In prostitution, one person is acting on their desires. The other person is not. And that should not be called sex. And the punching thing in boxing girls should not be called sparring, because it's not egalitarian or mutual. And then in my second play, the intimacy coordinator came from a series of very contentious threads on a huge women in theater. I think it's, you know, a list. And they, you know, in theater, intimacy coordination is huge. And these are young feminists that are very woke. And if they're doing a scene where there's any kind of physical intimacy or kissing, they demand that the intimacy coordinator be brought in on the rehearsals, on the set. They have a right to that. And yet these same women feel that prostitution's an empowering career choice for women. And I thought, oh my God, look at the hissy fit they throw about one kiss. Let's talk about getting all that consent in detail for, you know, what the woman in prostitution is going to have to be providing in her scenarios. And obviously that's a joke, as Jewel comments. It's, you know, the whole point of like bringing the pelvises together and apart, all that language that the coordinators use. The whole point is it is paid rape. And as soon as you talk about bringing an intimacy coordinator, it's very clear everybody understands it's paid rape. Otherwise, why not an intimacy coordinator? It is a scenario. It's a scene. One person is acting. So that was where I got the idea for the second play. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we could, as we know, we could talk about this subject all night. So
Yeah, don't get me started.
You're already started. So you bring up Rachel Moran, who I have been watching her interviews and listening to her experiences. And so as a survivor of prostitution and one who writes about her experiences as a prostitute in Ireland, and Carolyn, I think you dedicate Head in the Game to her. She shares that if people really understood what goes on in prostitution, all this nonsense of sex workers' rights would stop. And so, Melissa, I'm thinking about all of your decades of work in researching prostitution and what your organization is committed to, and what your research reveals about this widespread notion. How would your research and experience with the conversation that you've been immersed in, how would it speak to this issue that we should be supporting sex workers' rights? If that makes sense.
That's the big, that's the $64 question. How do we counteract the lies? When I started this back in the early 90s, it's a little sad to look back on it, because we're dealing with the same essential lies today that we were dealing with in the early 90s when San Francisco set up a task force on prostitution, politically stacked it with coyote members and pro-prostitution, pro-sex work folks, friends of Priscilla Alexander, who coined that term, and of course some public officials, one of whom had been a John of the woman who they were kicking off the task force. You know, I've never thought of this, Carolyn. The desire to kick Norma Hotelling, a survivor of prostitution, off the task force was exactly like, what was the name of the actor who comes running in with a bruised face?
Connie.
Exactly like Connie. Norma, with immense courage and fierce determination, demanded to be on that task force. And what did she talk about? Exactly what Connie talks about in your play. Norma said, and this is pretty close to what she actually wrote and spoke about in meetings, that she had been kicked in the head by a pimp who had steel-toed boots, and it had caused immense damage to her head, requiring emergency work. And she talked about getting beaten up all the time. The San Francisco Task Force on Prostitution kicked her off the task force because she was too negative. I mean, it's like right out of your plays, Carolyn.
Yeah.
And that's what actually happened. You have to really read reports that come out carefully from places like New Zealand. And if you read them carefully, what you can see is that pimping doesn't go away, even with decriminalized or legal prostitution. Pimps just have a little more muscle, frankly. They're accepted as normal the way the character, God, I can't remember their names. The woman who ran the boxing club.
Oh, Harley. Yes.
I mean, look at the empowerment of that job. I really appreciated the cordiality and camaraderie between the police officer and Harley. It's just right on, and it's there all the time. I mean, but fast forward 20 years from, or more than 20 now, from when Norma was getting kicked off the task force to what's going on in Oakland right now, where we're fighting another attempt to decriminalize prostitution here. Third one in the Bay Area. They don't quit, but
I think didn't Oregon just, they just had to go around with that. I'm thinking it was a citizens initiative, but I think it got shut down, but people were gearing up for a fight.
Place right now.
Yeah.
There's major funding coming in for it. But what I was going to say is Oakland police, what set off resistance in Oakland, in part, in addition to all kinds of racist police practices, was the fact that the Oakland Police Department were sharing a child in prostitution among 50, count them, 50 police officers, and they were pimping her out. And one killed himself or was murdered. Many were arrested. Others were fired or stopped. But this happened a few years ago. So it's very, very challenging to counteract the level of propaganda that we see about prostitution every place in the world. And I, as I said the other day, I think art and plays like the one you're writing is as important as any kind of research. You need a little research here and there, but boy, do we ever need.
Well, I just got to cut in because I do think that people need to understand they're hearing an incredibly great woman today, Dr. Farley. It's these countries that are changing the law and adopting the Nordic model are, actually leaning into the research. And that's so important that somebody has it and is doing it. And that is excruciating work because, Melissa has probably logged hundreds, thousands of hours interviewing people, prostituted people around the world. And not a lot of people can hear those stories. They're like, veterans' war stories. They're profoundly traumatizing. And I have so much admiration that you're going into your third or fourth decade of doing this kind of work. It's so essential though, because those lies are the first thing out of the gate. When we see these citizens referendums and everything comes up, it's like we're seeing, with the whole Trump administration, where's the science? Where are your studies? What, okay, you make that claim, where are the studies? And you're kind of like, I have them, and they're irrefutable. And as you have published 40 scholarly articles on this, but it doesn't filter into the public discourse. It doesn't make it into popular opinion. There's this disconnect, as we saw in our last administration. Like, it's the big lie really gets the mic, and it is important. It was quite distressing to me to see so many of my colleagues in theater immediately try to lecture me about prostitution, assuming I was coming from a place of religious Puritanism. And one of the people responding to me said, "You know something, Carolyn, this is not a good look for you." And I let them know that I had a roommate who was a prostituted woman, and she was murdered and disappeared. And I don't know what the good look is. What is the good look I should have? I guess they mean the other way. Look the other way. That's a good look.
I think it's a kind of hip, sexually progressive, cool, anything but Puritan is a good look. Is what the left says.
It's uncritiqued. It's like and they seem to be astonished that a lot of the people in the abolition movement are women who have left prostitution. Like, how can that be? We all know it's an empowering career choice for women, or the stats about the number of women who would like to get out. I remember reading, I think it was McKinnon, on what would a prostitutes union look like when they do a survey of what do our union members want help with? Get us the hell out of this industry. Like, that's not a real union. I mean, this is not a real job. This is not real work. It's paid abuse.
She says there's no way to keep women safe in prostitution. And speaking of McKinnon, I wanted to reference her essay, Trafficking, Prostitution, and Inequality, which I think, Carolyn, is what the essay that you're referring to, where she talks about unions. But she also states in that essay that some people think it's politically correct to tolerate prostitution and to oppose efforts to do anything about it. And that many think that it is a tolerable kind. There's a tolerable kind of prostitution and an intolerable kind of prostitution, i.e., a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. She explains that advocates of decriminalization and legalization often make distinctions between adult versus child, indoor versus outdoor, voluntary versus involuntary, prostitution versus trafficking, and legal versus illegal. Yet Rachel Moran explains that, quote, violence is part of every single act of prostitution, that this is the biggest part of the picture. Prostitution is violence in and of itself. She says buying your way inside a woman's body is violence. She is very clear that prostitution is commercialization of sexual abuse. And your work, Melissa, informs us that prostituted women are subject to more violence than any other group of women in the world. McKinnon's work too articulates over and over again that prostitutes are the most raped class of women in history, and that this has everything to do with their job, that liberal feminists are so fond of framing as an empowering career, yet not one that they would consider. So because we're talking about liberal feminists, though it's not only liberal feminists, but especially troubling is that it is also liberal feminists choosing to define the narrative rather than listen and amplify the survivor's voice. So Carolyn, you spoke to this disconnect, and Melissa, my question to you is why are they defining the narrative rather than listening and amplifying the voices of the women who are coming out of prostitution and talking about their experiences and their stories? And where is this disconnect? And more largely, who does it serve? I mean, why take up this stance?
Well, let me just say one thing that that I hope people listening to this will look into further. There is a very intense battle being waged against the people that I would describe as exited survivors. That is, and that's who some of them are on this Zoom performance right now. I know I've seen them on the question Q&A list. There's a battle between exited survivors who are free to speak about the truth of their experiences, as opposed to women who are still in prostitution and either are in it because they have to continue in it in order to pay the rent or get enough food or pay their tuition or something like that. Or, and people have no idea about this, keep this little, here's one little statistic I do think people should grab onto. 84% of adult women in prostitution are under pimp control. Doesn't look like it. They're smiling, they're happy. They don't call him a pimp, they call him a boyfriend, a girlfriend, manager, business partner, roommate, but it's a pimp. And that means they're under third-party control. So you get the women that are under third-party control putting out the party line about sex work, choice, consent, blah, blah, blah. And they are particularly vicious toward exited survivor. That isn't talked about much, but many of us know about it and have attempted to expose it. It's a great deal of contempt and abuse aimed at them. The one other thing that you both brought up, Rachel Moran, and I so appreciate her writing about the emotional devastation of having to pretend intimacy in prostitution. These days it's called sugar dating, seeking arrangement, or sugar daddy, sugar baby prostitution, or the older term is girlfriend experience, where she not only has to do what is much easier for a lot of women and men in prostitution, you know, a quick blow job, a quick this or that. She has to put on a convincing emotional performance so that he can keep it up. Because if it's not a good enough performance, boom, he's going to lose it, the erection. And this is all about keeping the penis happy. Prostitution is. So the emotional demand on women in prostitution is pretty devastating. You have to imagine having to keep a deep, intimate presentation up that convinces some guy you really can't wait to finish dinner and run back to the apartment and fuck him. You know, that kind of a performance that convinces him is challenging. And it's a deeper emotional betrayal sometimes, even than performing sex acts, which is 100% of what prostitution is. So I just wanted to add that emotional piece to it, Stripe. And it took me years to understand that kind of stuff. The verbal abuse in prostitution is as harmful as punching Connie in the face, as, you know, strangling her. Yeah, that's immediately life-threatening. But the verbal abuse, even after she gets out, it echoes in her head in stressful situations. It's so hard to get rid of that stuff. I've had women who can tell me a list of horrific acts of violence perpetrated against them, but it's really excruciating, and I don't push them because it's so uncomfortable for them. It's excruciating to describe the specific sexist and racist abuse that happens in prostitution. And of course, prostitution is always racist. Women are bought, skin color is eroticized. Every single skin color has its own little erotic price on it for the John. I'm going to stop and let Carolyn say something.
Well, you know, to tell you the truth, and we talked about this, there's a lot of secondary trauma doing this work, and I'm feeling it right now. But I'm also, as a producer, I'm watching the clock. We're at 7:20, and we have quite a bit of Q&A activity from what I'm seeing. I'm not vetting those, but I'm thinking we need to be watching the clock. You know, I felt I felt like the talkback shouldn't run much over a half hour. So I don't know, Stripe, this is your
Sure.
show. What do you want to do?
At this point, we can invite Kate to share a question or two from the Q&A. Will you please join us, Kate?
This is Kate McMullen, by the way. She's our tech director, and she has saved our life so many times on this project. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We've got some really interesting questions, deep questions, personal questions. One thing that comes up is the idea of the consent form. Is that an actual thing? And the idea being that it suggests legalization of prostitutions so that prostitutes can form a union. But the Nordic model assumes that abolition means that there's no contract considered legal between prostitutes and clients. So how do you, I guess, what is your response to that?
Oh, in that play, in the intimacy coordinator, I assumed this was a legal brothel, either in Nevada or a state-run one, because there's a receptionist downstairs, and there's, you know, there are some boundaries, and that's not a lie about the belt and the tie, by the way. And of course, what kind of think of a job you've worked. How would you feel if you're waiting tables and all the men have to come in and check their belts and their ties, because otherwise they might just get carried away and murder you when you bring their food? I mean, don't get me started. But I was assuming, yeah, this is like one of the legal brothels. So there is some kind of a legal, you know, they pay money. It's, you know, it's regulated. And of course, the consent form, it exists if you're an intimacy coordinator. At this point in time, it's only used in film and theater. But my conceit was, what if we tried to bring that into a brothel situation? That analogy didn't hold up unless it was already some kind of an establishment that was legal. So clearly that wouldn't be in the US unless it was something like the Nevada brothels. So yeah, I can see where that's a little confusing for people. That consent form does exist in the theater industry, and it's unbelievably detailed, really. The 3 levels of touch, and then all this strange language, upper chest front instead of saying breasts, you know, all of that. It's a little bit laughable, but also not. You know, because, you know, I worked in theater before there was any consciousness about that. And, you know, you'd be in a scene where you're getting groped or whatever, and there just were no boundaries. And you often felt like, I'm not sure this is acting on the part of my partner. So I was like, yeah, this is probably a good thing, but it is very detailed. But anyway, yeah, it's a real thing. But I like that the line that really sums up that whole play is the consent form is the most dangerous thing, or whatever. And I just want to quickly give a shout out to Andrea Constand, who was the woman after 1,800 victims or whatever, who brought Bill Cosby down. And this was a lesbian and an elite athlete. We're not talking about some clueless 17-year-old model. This was an adult woman, an elite athlete, and a lesbian. And she was confused and kind of numbed out. And when she, found herself in a state of undress the next morning, was ashamed, embarrassed, continued to have contact with Cosby, invited her family to come see one of his shows. But what did it for her, that moment when, she stopped associating, she left her field and began to train to be a massage therapist. And they had this whole unit on consent and touch. And that was when all the synapses started to click for her. She picked up the phone, she called her mother, and she said, I was sexually molested by Bill Cosby. And then together they phoned the police. But it was interesting to me that even with a woman that intelligent, that savvy, and lesbian, not putting up with a lot of BS from men, it was the consent form. It was being taught consent in a structured way was when the light went on and she felt empowered to call him out on what he did, to even let herself understand what had happened to her. And I do believe that the consent form it's a revolution. So that's kind of my feeling. And shout out to Andrea Constand. Her story is really important. If you don't know it, Google her.
Well, let me say something about consent forms. I think it's an insane concept in prostitution. I think it's an oxymoron. As a woman in a legal brothel said to me maybe a decade ago, it's like you sign a contract to be raped. That's crazy. And another brilliant take on consent forms was done by one of the, if not the first in the US organization of survivors called Whisper, Women Hurt in Systems of Prostitution Engaged in Revolt. And Giobe and the women at Whisper wrote up an incredible, do you want this job? And I'm actually looking at it. We've got it up on our website. If you Google Whisper, you'll be able to pull it up. It's brilliant. Women and girls applying for this position will provide the following services. 1, being penetrated orally, anally, and vaginally with penises, fingers, fists, objects, including but not limited to bottles, brushes, dildos, guns, and animals. If you really lay out what the job is and what the consent is to, it becomes insane. Being bound and gagged, tied, burned, hung up, and being photographed or filmed performing these acts. And it's even got a hilarious point in it, which is wages will be negotiated at each and every transaction. Payment will be delivered when client determines when and if services have been rendered. Corporate management fees range from 40 to 60% of wages. Benefits will be provided at the discretion of management. I've always liked that line, which means no benefits. But the idea of a consent form, as whoever was asking that, it doesn't make any sense in prostitution. I mean, would you ask people, who are going into a camp, would you ask Japanese people who are going into a concentration camp in California during the Second World War to sign a consent agreement? Frankly, to me, it's more equivalent to that than anything else. These are human beings who are having massive human rights violations perpetrated against them, even though nobody recognizes the human rights violations against the Japanese during the Second World War or women in prostitution now. But when you're talking about putting people in brothels or or moving, pimp-controlled women who are being moved into the giant multi-storied brothels in legal prostitution in Germany right now. The notion of consent doesn't make any sense, because as one of the play mentions, I think it's the second one, 90% of women want to get out now. If they could even approach the amount of money being made in prostitution, they would be out.
Well, in my
Oh.
play, I make the point that the women they consent to waive consent. That's the
Yes,
agreement.
that's
You
the
know,
idea.
and they don't really even consent because the coercion, as McKinnon lays out, you know, being groomed for it in childhood, being traumatized, being homeless, being, you know, like the deck is so stacked, consent becomes meaningless. Yeah. Again, I'm watching time here.
Sure.
I wanted to
We-
make a note that Kate is going to help me figure out how to personally answer the people who are asking questions. We will, you know, we will answer those later, because obviously we're not going to get to all these.
So, yes, so we've talked a long time tonight about a conversation that many people do not want to engage in. I want to thank you both for your commitment to this issue, to write about it, to research it, to center the voices of survivors and those who are still in it, to focus on reality rather than the abstract and theoretical. Any last words? I know we could continue to talk for hours, but are there any last words or thoughts from either you, Carolyn, or Melissa, and or simply where does one go to continue the conversation?
I just want to do some house cleaning. Like, this will be up and online for 48 hours. Thank you, Kate. And don't forget to go to Prostitution Research and Education and browse around. As long as you're there to donate, take a look around. And yeah, and thank you all for attending, and particularly to spread the word. It can only be up for 48 hours. We have an agreement with Equity, which is the actors union. It's a special arrangement, so we can only stream for 48 hours. I recommend anybody curious to hang out on Melissa's website, but also to read Paid Rape. It's a miracle.
Paid for.
Paid for, yeah. Paid for. I can't speak highly enough about that book. It's an absolute miracle that someone could go through those experiences and write with such extraordinary insight and clarity. I can hardly be articulate about anything, and anyway. So, yeah, that book. I think that's everything that I wanted to say. Right? Yeah, I think so.
Stripe, thank you, and thank Carolyn for the opportunity to participate in this conversation. I really appreciate it. And thank all the actors for brilliant work.
All right. The conversation will continue. Not with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Stripe. All right. I guess we will be saying good night, and the actors and all are gonna head on over to cast party now. We'll
All
see
right.
you later. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
Bye.